everyone, my name is Aparna Bhatia, and this week's tech tip is going to be about how to edit wall profiles. So here we have a nice little wall that is 10 foot in length, and it goes between level 1 and roof. So you can see that our base constraint and top constraint have been specified as base constraint as level 1 and our roof as our top constraint. All right, and you'll also notice that our unconnected height is 12 foot 8. This will be important for in a little bit. Okay. Something to consider or something to note is when you're trying to edit the wall profile, we cannot use editing wall profile to create openings. MWF just doesn't support that, and I'll explain the reason why. So let's say we edited the wall profile, and we're going to just add a nice little opening in here. So you can see that in Revit, it looks like an opening. It looks like there's a hole in the wall. But in reality, when we are treating this or trying to frame this with MWF, MWF is looking for the bottom of the wall and the top of the wall. So when it comes here in the middle, so for this portion, this is the bottom, that's the top. Pretty easy. But when it comes here, it notices that this is the bottom, that's the top, and then this is the bottom and that's the top. So basically our nodes are not going to be able to place the outer extents of the wall correctly, or basically the full extents of the opening correctly. So, and also that this opening has no data. You can't apply a marker to it. It has no parameters for us to be able to grab to know that this is an opening and treat it like one. So you'll notice when I go ahead and create a panel here, just go ahead and create. You'll notice that it doesn't even bother with that opening. It actually just takes the bottommost extents of the wall and the topmost extents of the wall and just follows through with that. All right, so if you did want an opening that is in the wall, I'll show you another way to do it. You'll also notice over here that we have these little shape handles. And these shape handles, yes, they allow you to make the opening bigger or smaller, but again, it has no data and MWF doesn't support it. So what's a better way of creating this opening in a wall? So we'll reset profile, we'll come back, select the wall, and you'll notice there's something called wall opening. These openings we do support. So these are basically rectangular straight wall openings. Again, these don't have many parameters, but it's an opening that's kind of an instance-based opening. So you can see that it says rectangular straight wall opening as a category. It does tell you the top offset, base offset for it. And I can just basically adjust the size of the opening as needed. And when I regenerate my MWF panel, you'll notice that it actually treats it like an opening and frames around it like an opening. So I'll place the king members, the header and the sill for that specific opening. Okay, and there you go. Okay, now that we know how openings work, let's talk about how we can frame a wall with other profile edits. So let's go ahead and make another 3D view with that. So go to BX. And over here, I'll just get rid of this little opening that we created. Oops, there we go. So let's talk about the other profile edits. Another type would be maybe you have a step foundation and you need the bottom of the wall to be stepped. Or you have stairs underneath and you want the bottom of the wall to be sloped, and so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and get started with that. So let's say we have a step foundation and we need to create steps over here. So we'll go ahead and add in our steps. And there we go. And like I said, it needs to be a closed loop. So we can just go ahead and close the loop. And that way, this is a closed loop, and that's basically your profile created. You'll notice when it finishes editing the profile, you'll notice that we have dashed lines here, and that's the edge reference of your wall. Okay, so what that means is all of our length values that are being shown over here in the dimensions, and our unconnected height grayed out value here is all coming because of these references. So you can see the length of the wall is 10 feet, even though over here it's shrunk to be shorter. So it's not using the length of the wall at the bottom of the wall or the top, it's using that reference plane. Okay, so what that means is that's what MWF also uses. So right now this wall sketch or profile sketch line is actually attached to that reference plane. What happens if I move it in a little bit? You'll see that it asks me to remove constraints. So if I remove constraints, right, and I hit the checkbox here, you'll notice that's the edge of my actual wall. And now you'll see what happens when I frame it with MWF. So once the wall is framed, you'll notice that the MWF members are actually going to the edge of that reference and not just the edge of this wall. Okay, so even though the bottom has been zigzagged like this, it still needs something to be aligned to the bottom reference. Okay, something still has to touch the bottom plane here. And over here, since this is not going all the way to the end, it should technically try to follow that line, but it will not because it does need at least one edge to be touching this outer reference. Okay, so that's basically how you can do a step foundation. You'll also notice again that there's no cripples placed at the bottom here, and that's because we have an option inside the properties for us to be able to enable those tools. I'm going to reset this profile again. Okay, so you can kind of see what the MWF members look like. And the other type of profile edit we might be able to do is something like editing the top of the wall to make a vaulted ceiling, for example. So let's go ahead and break this up. And we can select these two nodes and have it go up. And we're going to go back and talk about our our unconnected height. So if I come here and I say BX, there you go. So over here, you'll notice that our unconnected height is still 12 foot 8. And the reason for that is our reference plane is actually, our top constraint reference is actually stopping here. Okay. Whereas if I was to have done the slope by placing it inside the reference, so if I go ahead and move that and have that be right there, this is now true for our unconnected height to be 12 foot 8 because the top tip of that vaulted ceiling is at 12 foot 8. Okay, so if you're ever trying to use that value to grab height data, just be mindful that this is something you have to consider as well. Okay. Give it 1 second. Let me just regenerate that wall. And you can see that it actually aligns your top tracks and splits them at the peak and aligns them to the edges of your wall. Okay, so that's basically how you can edit your wall profiles to get your sloped conditions for your roofs. You can also align or attach your wall to the roof, but again, when like I showed you, the little rectangle here, the reference planes, they don't work really nicely with that attachment. So I highly recommend actually modifying the profile to align them to the slopes of the roof instead of actually modifying or attaching the wall to the roof and that's also because it might slope in 2 different directions instead of one, and we don't support that with MWF, and that will actually cause your panels not to create. So try to modify the profile to align it to the slope of the roof, so that you know that you're only sloping it in one direction like so, and it's not being sloped in the width direction. It's not being sloped like so, basically. Um, that's pretty much it for our how to edit wall profiles tech tip.